Alright, how's it going everyone? Alex with Jeeps Limited here. So, it's been a couple of days since my last video when I was trying to get some stuff going here to get the engine running. I got, at the time, a little bit of brake work done, got the radiator put in, got the starter put in, and some other miscellaneous stuff. Since then, I've done a few other miscellaneous things. I did a bunch of stuff that just didn't work, which resulted in needing to order more parts. So, waiting on some parts for some other shit. But what I did get since then, I got the power steering box, which I think I had at the time, but I got the box, I've got the new lines, I got the steering shaft, so I should have everything I need to put the power steering in, and then I got the whole cooling system, everything else I needed. I got the radiator hoses, I got the new heater core hoses, got a new thermostat housing and temperature sensor. I think I might need to get a gasket for the thermostat. I'm not sure. The old one, I don't think it had one on there, but I think it might have had one that fell off. I don't know. Anyway, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put the thermostat housing in, put the radiator hose on it, put the lower hose on, and I'm going to flush the block out, at least the cooling system of the engine, out with just water. I might use the garden hose. I might just try and pour water in it, kind of see what happens. I'm thinking I'm going to try with the hose, see what it does. So the first thing I'm going to do, throw that stuff on and just flush this thing out. So that's what we're starting with. Then maybe I'll get all that buttoned up today, depending on how happy I am with how it flushed. So that's what we're going to get started with. All right, after way too much dicking around, I got the thermostat housing on there. Had to take the belt off to do it. Got the upper radiator hose on, the lower radiator hose on, in a 5-gallon bucket, which probably just falls over immediately. And now, I'm just gonna do that. Oh yeah, I can already see the crap that just came out of it. There might be some coolant in there. It just turned a very nasty brown color. Ooh. There's probably some coolant stuck in there, but I did spin the motor over quite a bit earlier on and pushed all or most of the coolant water out. You know, it surprisingly didn't make that big of a mess. Swap the bucket out here. Let me show you guys this. It's pretty brown. You can see there's a lot of crap floating in it. There's a lot more stuff just in the bottom, so I'm gonna go dispose of this properly and then probably keep flushing it a little bit more. Alright, so this bucket, I mean, it's got red paint in it, but it was perfectly clean, so everything in there is what came out of the radiator. So I'm just gonna probably flush maybe like 15 or 20 gallons of water through here, maybe even more, until it just kind of just starts coming out clean. Well, there's a lot of water leaking out from the top somewhere, which could either just be me making a mess with the hose, or I don't know, I mean, the water pump housing could be cracked or bad or something. It's really not that old, but I mean, who knows? Anyway, that's surely not going to stop me from starting it. I mean, I don't even have the hose clamps and anything. I really don't have the thermostat housing on snug. It's not really that tight, so it could just be leaking. All right, so that was a mess. I ran probably like 50 or 60 gallons of water through it, and it just always kept bringing more shit out. I did kind of fill it from the bottom too, to try and break stuff up that way and then flush it back down. It really cleaned up a lot, but it was still a little bit messy. So what I'm going to do, when I start this the first time, I'm just going to do just straight water in here and let it run and pump some, because even the pressure in there from the pump's probably going to break up more crap than the hose will. I'm going to leave the thermostat out just so that it just goes. It just starts pumping. And then I'll drain that out probably like that day when I'm done running it. I'll drain it out because it's December in Chicago and I don't need all that water in there. And then probably what I'll do just moving forward at some point, really before I fill it with coolant and never have to touch the cooling system again, hopefully, I'll flush it with like a coolant system cleaner and some water, you know, to do that again. So it'll get flushed out a few times after it starts running. And then I'll go ahead and just fill it with coolant, and if it, whatever, it is what it is. So all of the water that I saw leaking all over the place, I think actually just came out of the temperature sensor port. The one I ordered wasn't at all correct. And I didn't think about it until after I was done with this. I took an old temperature sensor, actually it still works, but I took a temperature sensor from my JK, which actually fits, it's the right sensor, it even has the right plug, so at least it has a temperature sensor in it now. I'll probably just buy a new one. Anyways, but now that's all good to go. So what I'm going to do, I had to take the belt off to get to the bottom bolt of the thermostat. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make sure this is bolted in all the way, tighten up the temperature sensor. I do have to order a gasket for the thermostat, which is fine. I'm going to go ahead and just button this up, put the hoses on, put the belt back on, without the thermometer or thermostat, and then I'll replace the heater core lines and everything and just get all of that buttoned up, leave the water out of it, and then that way it'll be good to go. I just got to fill it when I start it. So that was a success, I would say. A mess, but a success. So I'm just going to button this up, and then I think the next thing I'm going to do is lay or sit in all the water that I just dumped all over the floor and start putting the power steering box in. So stay tuned for that. All right, I got the upper radiator hose put on. I made sure all the bolts on the housing were tight. And for anybody who's watching this channel and hopes to learn something, in which first off, I wouldn't do that if I were you, I'd like to point out I was wrong. The temperature sensor from the JK is not the right sensor. It just so happens to thread into there. They both have a two-prong plug, but they have different two-prong plugs. So I will have to get one, but in the meantime, at least there's a temperature sensor in there filling the port. So in the meantime, if I don't have one by the time I start it, which I don't care what the temperature is going to be, especially since it won't be connected to a gauge, because the gauges are somewhere in this garage, be good enough. I left the bottom hose off the radiator just so that it just continues. Any water that's in there can leak out. I'll probably, once I put the belt back on, maybe try and spin it over by hand, push out any water that could still be in the pump, just in case. So the next thing we're going to do, I ordered these lines for the heater core on the internet, and I think they're the right size hoses. They also might not be. You do have to trim them to fit, but I'm going to go ahead and replace those. I'm sure these are probably full of shit too. I mean, hopefully this should be a pretty straightforward swap, you would think. Get this one out of the way. I'm reusing the hose clamps because there's just not a darn thing wrong with them. And I don't know why this heat shield or whatever this is on this one, but I should probably put it back on that one. Cut that. These are literally the worst vice or channel locks I've ever used in my life. It's good and rusty. Like I said, I'm gonna... a lot of stuff just came out of that. I'm definitely gonna be flushing this system a few times, but I think honestly, until the thing's running, the water pump should be making a lot more pressure than the garden hose, which is probably gonna pull a lot more crap out of there, and then I'll get some of that cleaner stuff and use that. A lot of crap in there. The more I look at the cooling system, the more it makes me just think about the whole engine and how my hopes to just kind of ignore the engine and run the car might just be becoming less and less feasible. Just honestly starting to wonder, it might not even run. And like I said, I've spun it over by hand a lot, so I know it's not seized up. It's had oil in it the whole time, and every time I spin it over, I don't know if spinning it with a wrench can spin it fast enough to actually lift any oil, but either going to push it further down in there or I'm going to get it out. But I mean, in theory, every time I did that, my thought was, good enough. My thought was if I can lift some oil and just get oil on it, kind of keep it lubricated a little bit. So you'll notice I paid zero attention to which hose went to what side there. And I don't know, these should be big enough to get on there. Boy. It's time to review our pictures and see which hose goes where. Okay, that's what I thought. This hose goes to there. Excellent. They're tight. Okay. Just softened it up just a little bit. And you'll notice I did the easier one first. If you haven't noticed already, I genuinely have no idea what I'm doing ever. This is how the entire project has gone. Just winging it. Definitely do not claim to know how to do any of this stuff. I've made it this far, so I think it should be okay. Point that straight up. Assuming that went in there, right in the way of the dipstick. That should be good. Cut towards your face. I'm gonna go put these in my parts cleaner setup. Good as new. Keeping it all original. Go ahead and put the persuader on that already. Didn't really need it, but that's okay. Ooh, boy, like butter. They're obviously either the same size or preheating it really was just the way to go. Put my OEM hose clamp on. It's the details like the hose clamps that I think really make the build. Anybody can just go get new hose clamps, which I have boxes of them, but it's just, it takes a special kind of somebody to say, hey, I'm going to put in the work to fight these rusty hose clamps. I mean, they're 30 years old and they've clearly withstood the test of time. I don't see a reason to not use them. Like a Chinese finger trap. those onto because I can see where it was sitting in there. And then prepare a hose clamp, correct orientation. This one I don't think I need to trim at all. In fact, let me take that loose. I also did say earlier in the video that the next thing I was going to do was power steering. I just didn't. After this, the next thing I'm going to do is power steering. Wow. Ooh. This is also a plastic radiator, so I'm sure that'll crack and break in the first few times I drive it. Wow. It was only $100. I didn't realize it was plastic, but for $100 to get it down the road, that's good enough for me. So, power steering. And then actually another thing I've been doing, there's a bunch of brackets like for the battery tray, the evap canister, the air box, stuff like that. I painted it all. I'm just going to shoot it with some clear coat today probably, and then either install it while it's still wet or install that tomorrow. And then really, I got a distributor on order. Once I get the evap canister and the battery in, and I mean, I don't really need the air box, but it wouldn't hurt to put it on, but I could just plop that in there. Once I have the battery and the distributor, I really think that's all it needs. Put the lower radiator hose back on, put gas in it, and oil change, and I think that's really all it needs to get started. I am putting the power steering on so that that pump can have fluid in it, which, again, that's happening in just a second. Alright, so we are down here on the ground in the water looking at this power steering box. And I've got this bracket. This holds the power steering box on. This is the original one. I just painted it. It's just a big chunk of cast iron. So there's really not much that can go wrong with it. And now it just looks nice and clean. So I already see off the bat a problem. This has got 2 bolts that screw in on the bottom. And then 4 that hold the power steering pump. And which also, not pump, power steering box. Also, I'm not even convinced that this is a box for a YJ, because the YJ is supposed to have 4 holes. This one has 3. I think this is actually probably a Durango power steering box, which they're actually better boxes than the original YJ ones. I actually had a Durango box on here years ago, so that's not a problem, but I just think it's funny that they sold it as for a YJ, but it's technically not. There is one problem that I'm already starting to see. This section from here to here of the frame rail was replaced, and the kit that I got, rather than being like rolled tubing or whatever, it's plates that were welded, and there's a buildup, there's a lip here, and there's a lip here. I actually think that that lip might keep me from being able to get this in right. I might actually have to grind that lip down, which again is fine. I can do that. It's just a little annoying that I have this nice painted frame and I might have to take a grinder to it. To me, it's not that big of a deal. It's just annoying that when you make something for a specific vehicle, and I run into this a lot. It's not just with this. I've been running into this with a lot of things here. But when you make something for a specific vehicle, you should install it and actually test fit it and make sure that it works with everything else. Don't just build it and go, yep, this will work in theory, when then people are going to run into problems down the line. And even had I known that at the time, I need to get the electric ratchet. I did get the electric ratchet. Had I known when I was putting this on that I would need to do that, I would have just grinded it down before I painted it. Just a little frustrating to kind of run into those situations, in my opinion. But I also technically don't know if it's going to be a problem yet. I think it will, and we're about to find out. If this bolt doesn't fit in there, that's a problem. So I'm going to have to grind that lip down. And again, it's just frustrating. Grind the lip down, or I'd have to make the hole in the bracket bigger. But I don't want to do that either. So I guess I'm going to have to take the grinder to my nice looking frame section here just to flatten it out so I can put the stupid bracket on. Suppose before I do that, I should put the pump on there and see if it... Keep calling it a pump, it's a box. I should put the box on there. The pump is the only thing I'm not replacing. The box on there, see how it fits before I do that, because I also have a tendency to blame everybody else when I'm the one clearly doing something wrong. So I don't want to rule that out. This is probably not going to be something I can do in a seated position. Jack wasn't in the way. To go lay in the water probably. Cute. Now let's see if it doesn't fit. Yep, still not gonna fit. Alright, that's that. I don't think I can just finagle it in there somehow. I feel like I can see right through it when I do that. No, it's definitely not gonna line up like that. Which is odd, because it looks like it does. It really looks like it should. Let's take the box off, I guess. No. The thing wasn't so fucking heavy. It's irritating. Like, I mean, again, there's a big lip here. It's like 1/8 of an inch. It's just, again, if you're going to build something like this, you need to actually install it and put the whole thing together and see how it works. I've ran into this kind of problem with a lot of stuff, and it's just poor design. You know, I mean, I get it. You want to keep things cheap, but had I known I needed to do that before, I would have just done it before I painted it, and it's just more frustrating now that it's done. It looks good. Well, it's definitely in there now. Well, maybe we'll be okay, provided I don't have to take it out. Which I wouldn't be surprised if I have to take it out to get the steering shaft in. Oops. I don't know if it's going to find its way into the box though. That made it worse. I'm concerned as to what just happened. It bottomed out. It's actually just bending, or not, well, it's probably not bending anything, it's just pushing the bracket off the frame somehow. You get bottomed out and just pushing the bracket away. It's almost completely through the bracket. I can't hit it here any further because it's bottomed out. To get the bracket back over. Probably just really stripping out the bolt too. I mean, it's a grade 8, so hopefully it's not stripping out, but there's a good possibility that it is. I have to go get a new bolt, I guess. I need to. Very strange. Oh man, what a fucking pain this thing is. bolt is just straight up too short. Now you have no problem just, you know, sliding it in and out. Everything's basically in place where it belongs. The bolt, which mirrored the bolt that came off, just too short. This is the bolt that would have been in there before. I mean, without the washer, it's just not a whole lot of space there, but it's shorter by 1/8 of an inch. I mean, that really only has like a 1/4 inch of stick out on it. Well, you know what that means? Off to the parts store. Go get a larger one of these. Might as well stop at Ace. Well, I'm getting it at Ace Hardware. I might as well stop at AutoZone and see if they have a temperature sensor and a thermostat gasket, which I'm willing to bet money they do not. Okay. I am back in the store. Another bolt. I'm guessing that bolt I took out of there, there's 2 different size bolts for those top holes. One of them is a 5-inch, the other one's a 5.5. That was probably a 5-inch, and that's what I took out of there. I'm just guessing the wrong bolt was utilized when that Durango box was originally put in, which is funny because I'm not actually the one that put it in, so that wasn't my fault. But whatever. So, I guess I can lay back down on the ground, try to put this stupid thing in there now. Which I'm really looking forward to. Floor is still wet. It's gotten colder in here. Alright, so I'm not going to tighten that up all the way. I'm actually pretty convinced that I'm not going to be able to get the steering shaft in with the box in place. So I'm going to leave it loose, try and get the steering shaft in, and then just tighten it all up once that part's in. So I'm going to jump up top and put that in. And I've already pre-fitted this, so I know it fits on both ends. It's more or less keyed on the power steering box end. So that's got a specific way it needs to go in. Outside of that line. I'm fighting my brake line I put in the other day. Come on. Give that a couple light taps. Like I said, I know this fits on there. I already put it on there. Oh, what a fucking idiot. There is a retainer screw that can't be on there, which I also already knew that. But, okay. Fell right into place. Alrighty. Now, I was actually worried that I wasn't going to have enough ability to collapse it, but actually looking at it right this very moment, it's actually a long ways to go, and I'm slightly concerned it won't be long enough. Okay. Wonderful. Probably would have been easier to put the evap canister in first because it goes below this, and then on top of that, the bracket that holds the evap canister on. I don't even know how it attaches. Maybe it's got a couple of studs sticking out for it. I'm not sure. Otherwise, I might have a hard time getting that in properly, but you know, future me problem. It's actually really going to suck to get the lines in there. Like the power steering lines are directly underneath the grill. I'm sure that'll be a real treat to deal with. All right, well that's in. Just gonna go ahead and tighten up the bolts on the box then, and then see about getting the lines in. All right, I think we're gonna go bracket first. Okay. Alrighty then. Excellent. Make sure that that's seated properly. Not seated as well as I would like it. Let's do this. Loosen those, see if I can get that bracket seated better. Just not quite, you know, because it's now probably sitting on a little bit of an angle, so it's not quite flushed up with the frame. Maybe I would like it to be. Probably what I should have done is put another washer in there, but it did seat nicely right there. And I could have put a washer on this side as a spacer, but I'm going to pass that now. Just wait for it to fall off. Well, I think overall, I'm happy with that until I'm not. I guess the next thing to do is start looking into the lines and see if I can get those put in. Alright, so another side note here in my never-ending quest to make myself look stupid. My new thermostat housing came with a gasket that goes around here and around the holes and around this piece. And when I took this off, I paid no attention to the gaskets taken off. I didn't care. When I bought the new one, it came with that gasket and I put it on there. Now, this gasket here was stuck to the thermostat, I mean, whichever side it goes on. And I pulled it off the thermostat and thought I needed another round gasket just for the thermostat itself. So into AutoZone, I was like, oh, I need a thermostat gasket. Yeah, showed me some options. I'm like, no, I need a round one. And it took both of us a couple of minutes to realize that this round gasket was this whole gasket. It's just the whole rest of the gasket is completely gone. That's all that was left. So I don't understand how that wasn't even leaking. Now, before I put the thermostat on, I scraped a bunch of crap off of the surface of the head there, so I know whatever old gasket was on there is off. I know that. But yeah, I just thought I needed another gasket. That's just how far gone that gasket was. So I figured I'd point that out to everybody just to make myself look stupid. So anyway, I also got a temperature sensor, which I think is the right one this time. Alright, I can already tell this is not going to be a lot of fun, and that there would have been a benefit to putting these lines on the box before I put the box in. They really don't give you a lot of room here, and I could probably buy myself some space by getting these old lines out of the way first, but this way it helps me identify what line is what. Okay, so that one's threaded in there, and then it obviously has to replace that one there. This one's not tight because I already broke it free the other day, anticipating a problem with it. Didn't seem like it was, seemed like maybe it was more like cross threading because it didn't go in very far, but it might not go down that far. We're awfully close to the steering shaft. I'd have to As long as they don't touch it, it doesn't really matter, but oh, I just do that and put them further away from the steering shaft. Okay. The next one goes up to the bottom of the reservoir. Comes from the fuck. I'm willing to guess those O-rings are not just for funsies. Hopefully I don't forget to retort that. Okay. Now this one goes from the box to the reservoir. I'm wondering if they sent these caps so you can do something cool like this. Negative. I don't know what the caps are for. I'm sure I'll find out when I'm driving the car. Now, I'm not really sure why I even decided to do this project in the first place. I mean, I do, because I like the car. I've had the car for a long time. I didn't want to get rid of the car. It's got sentimental value to me. Not that I thought it was going to be easy, like, oh, I'll just, but I definitely had challenges that I wasn't expecting. Just like, I could rant about poor designs for ages, and obviously I wouldn't be able to design it any better because I'm not an engineer, but it's just like, I don't know, could the box have been a little bit lower? Could the grill have been a little bit higher? Probably. There's also a good possibility this would have been easier to put in the opposite order. Which is probably what a service manual would say to do. all you got to do is that, and it, whatever that was, run it through the thing and over the other thing and past the third thing, all while probably filling the hose with dirt. It falls in the hole, but oh, there we go. Okay. And you know, working on the car is one thing. I really don't know why I decided to share all of this with you guys on YouTube, other than thought it'd be fun, kind of show people what I'm doing. And the power steering pump is loose just because that's also the tensioner. Gotta get this off. I got every tool in my box that's just probably not quite the right one to do that with. The only thing that happened there was my hand popped. Old tin snips might do it. There we go. You're gonna get a bin for that. Because something tells me that this is holding some fluid back. Broke that. It wasn't. If I didn't get the hose though, it would have been in the bucket. Oh, see. I'm gonna splurge and use a brand new hose clamp. I don't know, anyways, I thought maybe put this on YouTube because it'll be cool and people will want to watch it and maybe inspire other people, and at least, at minimum, show other people that if you so much as have a pulse like me, you can probably do a lot on your own car that you'd be surprised that you could do. Because I had an amount of experience working on cars, but not really that much, and not enough that would warrant going and doing a project like this. It's really just a learn along the way type thing, which has worked out decently. Okay, need to find a wrench. Find a wrench to tighten those down with. Alright, I spared you guys the details of tightening everything up, but I was able to get it all actually pretty easily. Not too bad. This is tightened up. I got some nice shiny new hose clamps holding on everything to the reservoir, in which this is not the stock reservoir. It was replaced when the power steering box was put on, because I guess the reservoir cracked. I don't know. The power steering box was one of the first things that's really ever done to the vehicle after I bought it. And we couldn't get the box off, or really we couldn't get the lines off the box is what it was. So I ended up taking it to a mechanic who, I guess when they were doing that, it broke the reservoir, so they just kind of made up this one. It's just hanging here for now. Once, however it was attached, I don't remember. Doesn't really matter. It's just kind of slopped in there. So once everything else is in here, I'll slap it back into place. But it should be good enough that when the time comes, I can fill this up and run it. So I'll obviously have to bleed the power steering box at some point. But again, all I want is this in here so that when I run the engine, it's moving fluid through the pump and not just burning the pump up. So I'm going to go ahead and button up the belt there, put that back on so that I don't forget to do that. And then I'll probably give the engine a couple of cranks just to see if there's still water in the water pump and push that out. All right, it was another good afternoon, evening of wrenching. I got the coolant system flushed, maybe sufficiently, probably not. We'll see, it's going to get flushed again. Fortunately, I'm going to push all that crap into my radiator, but oh well, it is what it is. But we got that in, got the thermostat housing in, temp sensor in, radiator hoses in, with the exception of the bottom one. I'm just leaving it open in case water comes out. Thermostat is left out for the initial startup. I got the heater core lines in, I got the power steering box in, the power steering shaft in, and the power steering lines in the reservoir. So I think the only couple of things I have left to do, I gotta put the battery tray and the battery in it. I should be getting a new distributor, should be here tomorrow. I gotta put that lower coolant line back on. I'm gonna change the oil, and then I'm going to be trying to spin the engine over a bit, see if it can move some oil. I'll probably fill up the coolant, the power steering, and do that too, and see if it sucks some stuff down into its respective places. I got to make sure the fuel pump works. I got to put some gas in it and actually give this ignition, see if the fuel pump turns on, if I get fuel pressure. I think the plug was a little messed up for the pump, so I might have to mess with that a little bit, but I don't think it should be that big of a deal. And then, honestly, I'm ready. I'll probably crank it over a few times with the ignition coil off so I'm not getting spark, and I can, again, build oil pressure and move some fluids around and top off what I need to. And then I think we should be starting it. So we're getting closer by the day. Today, everything actually went good, so that's a surprise. So that's going to be the end of this video, so stay tuned. It could be the next video, guys, that this thing might run. We'll see. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.